Hey there, my name is Cameron, also known as Venus Theory, and in this video I wanted to share with you a really cool technique to add some organic texture to your loops and sounds to make your production stand out. This is a really cool technique for things like lo-fi and more dark style productions. Obviously, synthesizers and samplers are really cool, but in this era of super modern and polished production, sometimes these things can sound maybe a bit boring and a bit sterile. However, the technique I'm going to show you here today is really easy to do to add a whole other level of dimension and detail to your productions without all that much effort, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with and get creative with. All that you need to make this happen outside of the built-in tools in Cubase is a microphone, maybe about an hour of your time, and a little pinch of creativity. So let's hop into Cubase and get started. Here we are in the session, and to begin, I've created a basic patch with Retrologue. This is kind of just an electric piano style patch, and this is the loop we will be using today. To get things cooking here, I added two multi-taps with two different presets, the big FX pedal board and the ambient chords. This just adds a bit more movement and interest to the sound overall. This already sounds pretty cool, but we'll add a couple extra plugins just for a bit more of that sampled, gritty feel. First up here, I've added a tremolo. This just adds a little bit of volume and stability and makes things a bit more interesting. Then I've got a DaTube. I believe this is actually just the default settings. Then that feeds into a Bitcrusher on mode 2, the sample divider to 2, and the bit depth to 12. This will make it sound like it was run through some hardware to some degree and also add a bit of crispy, glittery bit crush stuff on top. Now at this point, this loop is already sounding pretty cool, but now comes the trick where we're going to take this up a notch by adding some cool texture. That is where this second audio track comes in, and on this track, I've added a loop of a plastic bag I recorded with my handheld recorder. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend investing in one. They're not all that expensive. It's a lot of fun to record the sounds around you, and you basically get free samples forever. So I took a plastic bag in my hands and just crinkled it in front of the microphone for about 30 seconds and then dragged that into my project here. So that sounds like this. Then to process it, I just added a couple of plugins. First, I've got the Roomworks SE here. This is mixed in at 100%, and the reverb time, I dropped it down to about 1 second or so, and this makes it take on almost an industrial metallic timbre. As you can probably hear, it sounds a little bit gross, so then I brought in this EQ over here to tame this. So I've cut out the low end to get rid of that kind of low air conditioning hum. I added a little bit of 1K and then tamed the high end a bit, which brings the sound to this. Now at this point you might be asking yourself, what do these two sounds have to do with each other? And that is where my friend the expander comes in here. What I've got is the expander set up on this track, and I went into the sidechain inputs and used the input from Retrologue as the sidechain input for the expander. Now what this means is as that melody loop plays, we'll hear that texture sound. All that's really left to do is to go into the mixer and blend these two sounds into taste, and you'll hear that as this sound plays, we get that texture underneath it. One thing that I think is particularly interesting about this whole technique is that this effect is actually dynamic, meaning that it reacts based on the level of signal it's receiving. Because an expander is basically a compressor in reverse and we're sidechaining, what this means is as we play quietly, we won't get as much texture, and if we play loud, we'll get more texture. To demonstrate this here, I've got a really basic 808 kick drum patch I made in Retrologue, and I've got the same plastic bag texture with the expander receiving the sidechain signal from this kick drum. I've got the velocity sensitivity all the way up here, so you'll hear as I play quiet, we don't get as much texture, and as I go louder, we get even more. And that's really all there is to it. This is a super simple technique that's a lot of fun. You can apply this to things like your drum samples, your entire drum bus. You could apply it to melody loops, vocals, or even your entire track if you wanted to, because there are no rules to production, and that's the beauty of it. So yeah, there you have it, a really easy way to add organic texture to your sounds and samples in only a few clicks using the expander. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. For more information on Cubase, you can head over to steinberg.net, and for all things Cubase and more tutorials like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel down below.